we're going to start with Alabama. Alabama last season, just to remind everybody, they beat Oklahoma in the playoff game and they got pounded by Indiana, who went on to win the national championship. They had a pretty good season, but by their standards, they were in the national championship game. They don't have a ring on their finger, so it was not a good enough season. There was a lot of talk about potentially firing Kalen DeBoer, but he beat Oklahoma in the playoff game in Norman, which kind of relieved some of his pain or relieved some of his hot seat talks. But they will go right back to those talks if he loses um, 3 games or 3 or 4 games in 2026. But let's dive into that real quick. So going into 2026, Ty Simpson for Alabama is gone. He will be in the NFL draft and get drafted here in the next couple months. The new quarterbacks are going to be Keelan Russell and Austin Mack for Alabama. Keelan Russell is a former 5-star recruit, one of the best quarterbacks in I think it was a 2025 class. So he'd be a redshirt freshman this coming year. He was a third string quarterback behind Ty Simpson and Austin Mack this past season. Austin Mack came from Washington with Kalen DeBoer, sat under Ty Simpson as the backup quarterback last year, came in and played versus Indiana when Ty Simpson went down. Played well, played decent. I think he's a good player, makes good decisions, has a really live arm, is experienced, knows the system that Kalen DeBoer wants him to run. So I think that's his advantage. The difference is I think that you're going to have to ask yourself, and these coaches are going to figure this out throughout the spring practice, is how good is Keelan Russell? Because I think that dictates everything. Is he going to be a guy that you just can't keep off the field? You don't have a choice, because I think Austin Mack's a really good player, but I don't think he has the same ceiling that someone like Keelan Russell does have potentially. Now, you never know. We really haven't seen a whole lot of Keelan Russell. He was in and out in a couple of games in cleanup time in 2025, but that's not even the same thing, in my opinion, to like a real game versus an SEC opponent with um, actual, stuff on the line. So we'll have to we're going to be following that throughout the offseason. I don't think they're going to name a starter in spring. They have no reason to. In today's times, with some of the problems we talked about in college athletics, I think the rules changed, if I'm not mistaken. But like, for example, if the last year, the loser of the starting job could potentially transfer, and you could lose your backup quarterback if you announce the starting quarterback in spring. So I predict them to name one in fall, maybe a week or 2 weeks before the first game, to let that starter get ready for game one. But I do not anticipate them naming one in spring. That wouldn't make much sense just from a business standpoint. You are paying both these quarterbacks to play football here, so you want to keep them happy. It's a hard process whether you win or lose the job. Either way, when you add money and transfer portal talks into it, it creates even more of a headache. So it's a very interesting time in college football and college athletics. Some of the things that we're going to talk about with Alabama is, so they beat Oklahoma in the playoff game. They start the season by losing to Florida State. And I mean, hell's falling from the sky. Kalen DeBoer is the worst coach ever. The lady from TikTok in Alabama is saying that she wants to use all the money she would potentially win from the I'm blanking right now. The lottery. She's like, all the money I'm going to use in the lottery, I'm going to fire Kalen DeBoer and pay his $60 million buyout. All that stuff was in rare form. And first week of the season, a couple weeks go by, they beat up on Wisconsin. They go to Athens and beat Georgia, and that kind of evaporated for a couple weeks. And then they have a couple losses. They lose to Oklahoma in the regular season, and then they beat Auburn in a thriller. So, and then they, like I said, beat Oklahoma in Norman in the first round of the playoff game, lose to Indiana, but they get waxed. I think that was the thing, is they didn't even have a chance. Like, it wasn't like they lost. They got boat raced, and they couldn't run the football. They couldn't stop anybody. They didn't look physical throughout the season, in my opinion. They didn't look like Alabama. They don't scare you. Like, even if Alabama beats you, okay, they beat you. Back in when they had that guy named Nick Saban, you were scared to death. They were gonna beat the living crap out of you. Now you have a shot. Like they're not invincible. That new team is Georgia, who you're scared the crap out of because at any point they can turn it on in the second half and really put the beat down on. But back to Alabama. But yeah, so I think going in 2026, it'll be interesting. They're gonna have Ryan Williams back. They lost Jeremy Bernard to the NFL draft. So we're gonna have to see how that goes. Um, I genuinely don't know. They made some changes. So I think that I'm pretty sure they made some. Let's see, what they hired a new defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. No, they still have the. They didn't. Kane Wanick still at Alabama. For some reason, I thought he was gone. But I think was it a not new offensive line coach maybe because their offensive line was horrible. Let's see. Okay, I think that yeah, that's right. Adrian Clem. Yeah, Adrian Clem. Let's see, was offensive line coach for the New England Patriots. So it looks like to be the new offensive coordinator. I knew they had a couple new coaches. They struggled to run the ball as well in 2026. Um, that'll have to be something that is addressed. They kept Ryan Grubb obviously as the OC. So yeah, a couple of things that they're going to have to fix: running the ball. They just couldn't run the football, and Alabama not being able to run the football is ridiculous. That can never happen. Um, Defensively, we'll see how they're going to be in 2026. They've got a tough schedule, and I'd be concerned just from Ryan Williams didn't really have a great year at all. He's really going to have to step up and be that leader and be that receiver one that Alabama needs him to be uh, for either one of these quarterbacks to have any sort of success. I would I'm a little concerned for Alabama this year. I don't think they're going to be. Um, I, I've got two sides. I mean, you could see them. They made some staff changes. They got some additions in the transfer portal, but I just don't see them as a power. So I could see them being like the 10th or the 11th, right on that fringe again and getting the playoffs. But I don't see them as like a top five team going into 2026. Um,